What's going on, guys? So a lot of stuff been going on in the market this past week, and I'm just going to kind of go over, the main points that I've seen of, the most popular stocks here on the channel, and, just the kind of stocks that you guys have been asking me to keep tabs on, and always asking for updates on. I will be doing more in-depth updates, on companies like Micron and AMD in the future, but I know a lot of you are freaking out and just kind of want to hear my opinion on what's going on with their price movement. And so I'm just going to give, a quick overview of, a bunch of the companies that I've been following and, just kind of what I think the market's doing right now. So, hope you guys enjoyed the video. This is going to be kind of a laid back, just brief overview of what's been going on, from the 15th to the 19th. And we're just going to kind of walk through it. So start off with AMD. So AMD was doing, kind of what AMD does normally. It was going up and down until Friday. So, it was experiencing normal volatility for AMD. It's to be expected. And then Friday, there was a massive 11% sell-off in the stock price. A lot of people are freaking out, and they're wondering, why did AMD drop? There's no news. What's going on? And then some analyst came out and said that that they put an $18 price target on AMD, meaning that it could drop 32% from the market's open. And that just seems to be enough of a factor to get a lot of weak hands to sell their shares. And so I think a couple of things were going on with AMD. First off, the momentum died. AMD has moved up, at one point it was up, 200 and some odd percent in less than a year's time. And you cannot expect that type of movement to continue or it to not give back some of that immense movement. That's just ignorant if you do not believe that it can give up, 10, 20% here and there. Other than that, the whole semiconductor space was down, mainly due to people, freaking out about the market as a whole. If the market as a whole is starting to go down, then growth stocks, especially semiconductor stocks and other tech stocks, are going to be the first on the chopping block for people's portfolio when they try to rebalance risk. Because that a lot of people, especially portfolio managers, they're looking at the long-term time horizon, and they really have to balance between, do they want high risk, high reward, or do they want, that safe, guaranteed return, assuming the stock market could get more volatile from here on out. So a lot of people, are starting to switch money, out of say, aggressive growth and putting it into bonds and, dividend payers. And, that's just to be expected. You can't be invested in tech unless you're ready for that type of volatility. And so I think that all of this, I think anything that's happened with AMD is completely, normal. And I don't think any of it's, out of the ordinary for what AMD has been doing the past couple of months. AMD does have their earnings report coming up, I believe, on the 24th. So that is definitely going to be the main factor on what is going to do, whether AMD is going to, rebound and, continue on to, the 30s and possibly the 40s, or whether it's going to kind of come back down to, about the, the low 20s, high teens range and just kind of trade around there for a while. There were a couple of articles that came out that said, AMD was going to have a lot of issues because of China. And I think that that is the most blatant, obvious, example of noise in the marketplace that I've ever seen. There is no way that anybody that had institutional money or any money in AMD, more than a week, did not know that, the tariff issue was going to affect all of the semiconductors. And, that was priced in. There is no way that that has not been priced in from institutional money. There's nothing new that has been discovered on that front. It's not like they came out with new tariffs and that we're going to directly target on this. AMD is also going to be probably the least impacted of all the semiconductors when it comes to Chinese tariffs, because a lot of their CPUs, they're, contracting with Chinese companies to make. So that way AMD doesn't get as much revenue from it, but they're not the ones that have to deal with, the tariff situation. So I don't get that. I think that that is just completely noise. Anything, worried about the tariff situation. So all in all, I think AMD mix of traders, pulling out, the momentum died off, and people are just kind of afraid of their earnings and they think that they're going to miss. And I think that's, it's a bit overdrawn, but at the same time, if you've been in AMD for more than like a week, you're still up. So I wouldn't be too worried about it right now. It's definitely going to be the earnings that are going to decide what direction the company moves in. I think it's going to, be more or less sideways as it's been. And, by sideways, I still mean, plus 20% here or there. because you have to realize that AMD's moved up, hundreds of percent in a couple of months. So, its sideways are pretty big swings. So you have to have a stomach for that. But I do not think anything fundamentally has changed with AMD. And I don't think the story has changed. I think it's just some people are less optimistic than they were a couple weeks ago. That's all it is. Micron, I know a lot of you asking about Micron. Micron realistically held up pretty well this past week compared to the rest of the semiconductor space. Micron only gave up, 3-4% when, companies like NVIDIA, AMD, and Intel were dropping, 5 to 10%, or, AMD's case, it's down, I think, like 13% this week. I definitely think Micron, is holding off pretty well. That's generally due because probably the company's buying back shares, and also because the majority of the pessimism of Micron has been priced into the stock until we hit, a recession. When we hit a recession, there's going to be a lot more pessimism priced into all of these companies. But for right now, I think the majority of what people were expecting to go wrong has been priced in. And unless anything, outrageous happens negative towards Micron, it's going to just continue to float between, 43 and, possibly, the high 37-ish range until any fundamental news comes out. I think that that's just to be expected. So me personally, I'm waiting. Anytime that it's going to be dropping below 40 is probably when I'm going to be buying more shares. I started buying it back in the 20s. So, me buying it up here is, it's something that I'm like not really in a rush to do, but at the same time, I'm not afraid of anything because I know that Micron will live through the next recession. I know that they will be a top dog again once we hit the next cycle. I'm not too worried about it, but I do think that there is possibility of, a lot more downside. So I'm not rushing into the position. Am I worried about the shares I currently have? Not at all. But I do think that there will be, assuming the market doesn't immediately rebound over the next couple of months, I do think there are going to be better buying opportunities for Micron. Cool thing though, Micron is, probably going to be buying all of Intel's stake in JV. So JV is a company that is kind of the bipartisan research and development contract that Micron and Intel did, a couple of years ago. I think back in 2015 is when they started off. And they made the 3D point NAND, well, not NAND, but 3D point drives, 3DX point drives. And that is going to be crazy because now Micron, is going to be able to buy this full company for, they bought their portion of it about, give or take about $1 billion years ago. And now they're going to buy out Intel's portion for roughly the same price. So a lot of people are freaking out like, oh, they're paying so much money for this and their stock price is going down. It's like, well, they've been invested and they've owned this company for a while. And all that they're doing is they're realistically increasing their position, now that they have more cash. And this is because Micron is really betting on, beating everybody else to the punch with, DRAM development and now the next version of, say, solid-state drives. Because the 3D point drives are going to, kind of be the middle ground between, you have extremely fast, really small volatile memory like RAM, and then you have, a solid-state drive or NAND that is, in comparison, extremely slow, much faster than a hard drive, but extremely slow compared to RAM. And the 3D point is going to be something that you can use, to store, programs and whatnot, like a solid-state drive, but it's going to have speeds that are going to resemble RAM. So it's going to be extremely fast. It's probably going to be, it's theorized between 5 to all the way up to 13 times faster than solid-state drives that are on the market right now. So when that hits, mainstream market, I think that is going to be the pole vault for Micron. And I do think that Micron is going to, with only having about 10% of their revenue coming from NAND, solid-state drives in the past couple of quarters, I think that is going to be a huge winning point for them against companies like, say, Western Digital, because SanDisk does not currently make SSDs that are nearly as fast as that. So really good point for Micron to, be capitalizing on this now. They don't think it's going to affect their actual expenditure for this year. So I think it's a great buy, and I do think that they're not going to be doing that until January of next year is when it starts, and then they can buy it anywhere throughout 2019. So we'll see when that happens. Other than that, same old Micron. I don't think anything major has happened with it. I think it's the same old story that, we've been listening to for a while. NVIDIA, massive pullback, pretty much just pulled to the semiconductor space. Nothing negative has come out with the company. Again, NVIDIA is just a high flyer. It's up tenfold over the past couple of years. people, that have been riding NVIDIA, even for the past couple years, even for like if you've been holding it for a year and you're up, close to 50%. People are probably just taking money. And again, with the market getting volatile, high flyers like NVIDIA are going to get pulled down. I do think that NVIDIA is going to, continue to make a lot of money in the future. And that's just what it is. I did start a small position, like I told you guys. And I'm expecting NVIDIA to continue to go down a little bit so I can buy up more shares, assuming we continue to be volatile. And then pretty much like every other semiconductor company, you have one of two things happen. You have one, we hit a recession and they plummet in price because semiconductor stocks will get destroyed during a recession. Or two, you have the market rebound and you have the economy, to be full optimism again. And then these companies will outperform the indexes like no one's business. But I'll be doing a really in-depth dive onto what's going on in the semiconductor market because I do think it could be used as a leading indicator to kind of the environment of the whole economy. But that's neither here nor there. Facebook. So Facebook, it's been holding up compared to the other major tech companies the past week with all the volatility, mainly due to because it was already had its big sell-off due to other things. But there's a vote going that people want to remove Mark Zuckerberg from the chairman of the board because he's not handling the data issues properly. And I think that is completely irrational. I get where they're coming from because Mark is not the best person at dealing with PR. But I think taking him away from that position is just unjustified right now. He hasn't made the best calls, but at the same time, he hasn't been making the worst possible calls. He's a really young guy. He started this multi-hundred-billion-dollar company out of college, and, he's still learning the process. Obviously, people, they're just freaking out and they want things to be wrapped up. I do think in the short term, say they did remove him from the board and they put, someone else in, I believe share prices would probably go back up because people would think that, okay, someone that's more seasoned would be able to handle all these issues more. And then, Facebook could continue to just make all the money that they're going to. But I think that at the end of the day, it's noise. I think Mark is fine, whether he is in the board, just remain CEO, whatever. I think he should stay. But whether he gets removed or not, I don't think anything, monumental is going to change from this. And that's mainly because no matter what happens, Mark Zuckerberg is going to have some role in Facebook, regardless of what his role is. So that's kind of that. Starbucks. So Starbucks has been, one of the best performing stocks in my portfolio this past week. They've been, ever since the Bill Ackman, came out, people are expecting now, people are becoming more optimistic. I'm still a little bit bearish on their next earnings, but who knows? People think that Starbucks are going to continue to execute very well, and they're going to kind of coast through, the market, whether it's tough or not. The Nestle deal, is kind of wrapped up. And since the Nestle deal, they're gaining $7 billion in cash from that. And that's selling off, the brands that weren't selling that much in Starbucks and giving Nestle the right to sell those products and, put Starbucks names on it. So I definitely think it's a great deal for Starbucks and for Nestle as well. But I think Starbucks got a much better, bargain off of this. And, Starbucks has announced that they are taking 5 of that $7 billion and dumping it into an accelerated share buyback program. So I definitely think a lot of companies right now are doing a lot of buybacks, and it's kind of worrisome as a whole. I would much rather Starbucks use that money to pay down debt. I'm not too worried about their debt because, they do have, especially with this, even if they used all of the, the $5 billion just immediately out of this deal, they're still adding $2 billion in cash to the balance sheet. So I'm not too worried about that. And, they are increasing their dividend. So, investors do have a lot of sentiment to stay. I just wish they paid down debt. I'm just super against debt. And that's really my biggest qualm with Starbucks. And that's why I cannot let Starbucks become one of my major core holdings until that debt goes away. I don't think it's too, outlandish right now. But I will not let Starbucks become, in my, say, top 5 biggest holdings until that debt gets taken care of. But other than that, the stock's executing really well. And just to wrap things off with the stock recaps, Altria and British American Tobacco are performing moderately well compared to the market sell-off. It's mainly because, tobacco companies and most sin companies, they pay massive dividends, because people are addicted. People, will continue to buy, alcohol, and they'll continue to buy cigarettes, and they'll continue to buy scratch tickets, and they'll go gambling. Pretty much regardless of what the economy is doing. And they're viewed as, a safer option to the rest of the market. But a lot of, investors don't put their money into it because, it's viewed as like bad on your conscience to, put money into something that, can, lead to very bad habits of people. I'm personally indifferent. I don't have the kind of money that I think it matters if I'm, righteous and I only invest in companies that I think are going to help the world or not. With my current portfolio size, I'm just focused on making money. That's kind of, take it for what it is. If I was, dealing with Warren Buffett's kind of money, yes, I would be much more conscientious to what kind of companies I'm putting money towards. But with hundreds of $1 billion as their market cap, me putting in, a couple hundred to a couple $1,000s into a company is like, a droplet in their daily price movement. So I'm not at all worried about my money really impacting anything in the long run. But these companies both pay amazing dividends. Right now, they're sitting at about 5 and 6% each. They're racked down with a lot of debt. But between, both of them kind of starting to show interest in the cannabis market, Altria owns 10% of bud, so 10% exposure to alcohol, and if you look at the current tobacco trends in millennials, and you look at like companies like Juul and vaping and all that, the amount of millennials that are being exposed to nicotine, even if it's not cigarettes, is going up. And generally, if you're exposed to nicotine, you have a higher chance of going to like standard tobacco. So I actually think that a lot of the the deceleration in revenue that these companies are getting is probably going to reverse or at least slow down. They actually had, as of last year, I think it was the first positive year in tobacco consumption in a while. So that's pretty interesting. Like, obviously these companies are making more and more money each year because even if they lose, customer base, they're able to increase their prices and, just compensate for it. And that's why they've been able to pay extremely strong dividends with a relatively low payout ratio and a really fast dividend growth. And if you look at their growth, over the year, you beat out the S&P dramatically with either one of these companies over the past couple of years. And most of it's through dividends. So, like, you have much less risk than the rest of the market. So I have started positions in those, and that actually leads me to, what's going on with the portfolio, just to give you a quick update. So I've just been buying a couple more shares here and there. I have about 20-ish% of the portfolio invested now in companies that I think were worth that amount for that price. I'm still sitting the majority of it in cash. I'm still just really waiting for good deals. We're getting there, but I'm still looking for like another, 10+% dip on the market before I really start deploying cash. Facebook down 4%. The portfolio is overall kind of flat, down about 1%. Shorting position with emerging markets. I've only been adding to this. I might be adding to this a lot more with how things are going, all the news that's coming out with China. NVIDIA, bought it kind of at not the best time. I bought it, it spiked up, and then it came right back down. So, that's fine, but don't have too many shares in it, only 10. Intel, kind of staying steady, down 3%. And, realistically, with how the markets have been, I'm not too upset about that. I did buy Nintendo. I bought it. I was up a little bit, and then it had a big sell-off on Friday. So I'm reasonably flat with that. Starbucks performing very well, up almost 6%, which Starbucks being a relatively, not really a growth company anymore, pretty happy to see that, about a 6% gain on a company that's yielding me close to 3% on a extremely high dividend growth rate. I'm okay with that. Altria, I did buy some of it. I'm up a little bit over 2%. Gold is flat. Pepsi, I'm up 5% with that. This kind of a environment, whenever you see dividend aristocrats go on sale, they're probably going to rebound very quickly. So that's just kind of the way it is. And they're also, a hedge for whenever the market does go down, they're going to be affected less than the overall market. And Skyworks Solutions been pretty much flat, and Micron's been down a little bit. So that's just kind of my quick update, you know, with companies that I follow, companies that you guys are interested in. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you guys want me to be, you know, doing more videos on the portfolio, or if you want me to give like only, you know, a weekly or a monthly review. You know, just let me know. You know, I'm definitely going to be doing more in-depth videos of other companies. You know, let me know in the comment section down below what company you want me to do an in-depth video on first. I know I've been getting a lot about AMD, I've been getting a lot about Micron, I've been getting a lot about Intel. So I got that you guys like semiconductors, but, you know, there are other companies out there. So let me guys know what you think. I hope you guys like that. I hope you guys got some use out of that, and I will catch you guys in the next video, and I hope you guys have a good trading day. Peace.